All right, let's dive into one of the wildest, most bizarre true crime stories of the digital age. Seriously, it's a story about a massive crypto heist, an aspiring rapper and CEO, a years-long game of digital cat and mouse, and how one single gift card brought the whole thing crashing down. Let's start with this number, $4.5 billion. That's how much money the U.S. Department of Justice seized back in February 2022. And get this, it wasn't just a record crypto seizure. It was the largest single financial seizure in the department's entire history. So who could pull something like this off? A state-sponsored hacking group? Some massive criminal syndicate? Well, not exactly. Yeah, not quite. The masterminds weren't who you'd expect at all. They were a New York couple, Ilya Lichtenstein, a pretty quiet tech entrepreneur, and his wife, Heather Morgan. And Heather, well, she was a surrealist rapper, a Forbes contributor, and the self-proclaimed Crocodile of Wall Street, who went by the stage name Razzlekhan. That's right. This eccentric pair was at the very center of a scheme that went on for years to launder billions in stolen Bitcoin. But to really get this story, we've got to go back to where it all started, the original crime itself. Okay, so let's set the stage here. The story kicks off not with our main characters, but with a massive security breach at a major cryptocurrency exchange. So, way back in August 2016, a hacker found a weak spot in the crypto exchange Bitfinex and made off with nearly 120,000 Bitcoin. At the time, that was worth a whopping $71 million. Now, the thing about crypto is, while all the transactions are public, the identities behind them are anonymous. So for almost 6 years, this huge treasure trove of Bitcoin just sat there, untouched in a digital wallet. A treasure chest nobody could open, all while its value was skyrocketing into the billions. So while most of that Bitcoin was just collecting digital dust, Lichtenstein and Morgan started this incredibly meticulous and complex process. They began trying to clean a little bit of the stolen funds at a time, very slowly, over several years. Their strategy was just insanely complex. They used darknet markets to mix their stolen Bitcoin with other people's money, making it way harder to trace. They set up tons and tons of accounts on crypto exchanges using fake IDs and shell corporations, basically fake companies that only exist on paper. They did what's called chain hopping, swapping Bitcoin for more private cryptocurrencies like Monero to try and break the digital trail. And finally, they tried to slowly cash out, turning small amounts into gold, gift cards, and tiny bank deposits to avoid raising any red flags. One of the key tricks they used is something called a peel chain. Think of it like this. You've got a giant stack of bills. With each move, you send the big stack to a new place, but you peel off a few bills to send somewhere else. Now imagine doing that thousands and thousands of times. It creates this absolutely dizzying web of transactions that's designed to throw anyone and everyone off their trail. And to make it all seem legit, they had their cover stories ready to go. They'd tell the exchanges the money was from Lichtenstein's early investments in Bitcoin from like 2011. Or they'd say it was just revenue from Morgan's actual tech company, Salesfolk. They were building a whole fake reality to hide where the money really came from. For years, their complex digital dance seemed to be working perfectly. They were patient, they were sophisticated, and they were always one step ahead. But then, after all that high-tech digital genius, the entire thing was brought down by one incredibly simple, low-tech mistake. So you've got to wonder, right? With all this sophistication, how did federal investigators finally connect this quirky New York couple to one of the biggest digital heists in history? Well, the answer wasn't in some huge multi-million-dollar transaction. It was hiding in plain sight. This is where investigators from the IRS Criminal Investigation Unit finally got their big break. They managed to trace a tiny fraction of the stolen money as it moved through all those complex laundering steps. It ended up in an anonymous cluster of digital wallets. And from that cluster, a very small amount was moved to an exchange that sells gift cards. That's it, $500. After laundering billions, a transaction worth just $500 is what ultimately exposed them. It was a classic case of following the money, no matter how small the amount is. Okay, so here's how that tiny thread unraveled the whole sweater. That $500 in crypto bought a Walmart gift card. The purchase was made from an account that was linked to an IP address investigators traced right back to Ilya Lichtenstein. Then, the gift card was used on the Walmart app under Heather Morgan's real name to buy personal items that were shipped directly to their Wall Street apartment. In one simple purchase, they connected the anonymous crypto to their real names, their real IP address, and their real home address. That one purchase was the linchpin. The Walmart transaction gave investigators all they needed for a search warrant, and once they got access to the couple's cloud storage, they found an encrypted file. After they decrypted it, they hit the absolute jackpot, a spreadsheet that had the private keys to the original hacker's wallet holding over 94,000 Bitcoin, worth $3.6 billion at the time. The keys to the entire kingdom just sitting in a file. So with that digital treasure chest now in government hands, the case moved from the blockchain to the courtroom. The whole saga of Razzlekhan and her husband was finally entering its last act. And in a pretty surprising turn, Ilya Lichtenstein admitted to everything. He wasn't just the launderer, he was the original hacker who breached Bitfinex all the way back in 2016. For that, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Heather Morgan, who claims she only learned about the hack years later, pleaded guilty just to money laundering and got a much lighter sentence, only 18 months. But the story doesn't end there, because both Lichtenstein and Morgan cooperated so much with the authorities, they earned themselves an early release under a law called the First Step Act. So by January of 2026, Lichtenstein was already a free man. And with the criminal case closed, we can finally look at the staggering aftermath of this whole thing, a crime whose value grew over 100 times, while the culprits were just trying to hide it. The scale of this it's hard to wrap your head around. A $71 million theft in 2016 becomes a $4.5 billion seizure in 2022. By early 2026, that same amount of Bitcoin was worth nearly $11 billion. It's just a powerful illustration of how volatile and absolutely explosive the crypto world can be. And for the final, truly ironic twist in this unbelievable story, upon his release, Ilya Lichtenstein, the man who hacked an exchange and tried to launder billions, stated that he now plans to work in cybersecurity. You just can't make this stuff up. This entire saga leaves us with a fascinating question for our digital age. The U.S. government, through the proceeds of this crime, is now one of the biggest Bitcoin holders in the entire world. So what happens to our ideas of justice and value when a historic digital heist ends up becoming a massive public treasure?